see that notification pop up on the old Facebook.
Yeah,
I'm
waiting
looking
for it.
for
There we are.
my
Just popped up.
And YouTube looks like it is live. Welcome back to the Dynasty Fantasy Football Heat Seekers live stream tonight. Brad Menendez and Rob Silver and I are going to be talking our top 10 wide receivers. And I haven't even, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. I don't know if you guys are available more nights this week, but seeing as how next week is draft week, we probably want to do some sort of draft show next Tuesday. But if you guys are free any nights this week and we want to do like our top 10 running backs and other positions, then maybe we can put something like that together and do some bonus shows this week. If you guys are available, just let me know and we can work something out. Give these fans out there a little more content as, you know, until that draft comes around and until, you know, I'm looking forward to April 19th as well for the last dance that ESPN's doing with
Jordan.
with the Bulls team, Michael Jordan. I was a big fan growing up. That's the day in which I could watch the NBA and not cringe. So looking forward to that as well. But man, there is not a lot of content out there right now that is at least new and fresh. So we hope to bring you more and more as time goes on, and hopefully before long we will no longer be secluded to our homes and the backyard. So, Rob, how you been, buddy? I was not on last week, so we didn't get to chat.
Oh, I've been good. Far from secluded to my home, but secluded to home in my office for the most part. So don't go out too
Right.
much.
Brad, what about you, buddy?
Been busy, just trying to keep content streaming every night. It feels like, but that's good. We got to get the people what they want, so I can't complain. How about you?
Brad's like, great. Thanks for putting me on the spot for more streams. I'm already overwhelmed, and you want to throw me on more. No, you know, I've been busy. I've been fortunate that my business hasn't been hurt too bad yet, but I don't know how long that's going to last if this keeps, you know, there's rumors that Indiana's going to get extended an additional 2 weeks. Some of my clients are, you know, worried about that coming up. So, you know, this might be going on longer than we had hoped. But I will tell you this, my stimulus money is pending in my account right now. So hit that bad boy so I can pay off some of these bills.
About to make it rain, some of that American money.
Make it rain on the bill collectors. That money was magically gone before I got it. Yeah, so you know, we did have a little bit of news this week. Yesterday, I think, was the day it came down. We don't even know what day it is anymore. But one Christian McCaffrey, what was it? 4 years, $64 million.
Yeah, they made it rain on him.
Yep,
So highest paid running back, and what, like 8th highest paid wide receiver. So when you play two positions and you play them both very, very well, you get paid handsomely. Read a stat the other day, is the only player in history to have 2,500 receiving yards and 2,500 rushing yards in his first 3 seasons. So he really is a wide receiver and a running back, not just a combo player. He literally plays 2 positions.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing.
He's worth it.
It's so hard because, you know, I posted that one rookie draft where I had a bunch of, I think I had 8 picks in the first round, and you know, I got Cooper Kupp and Marlon Mack in the 3rd, and just you know, about everything went right in that draft for me, except for somehow with 5 of the first 6 picks, I did not get Christian McCaffrey. And yeah, we know how much he's worth, and I would like to have him on my team right now. But I didn't expect this. Like, I knew he was going to be a great receiver out of the backfield. I did not see him holding up for 400 touches. I just didn't think that he had that body type. I didn't think he was going to be that type of running back. And I don't know that anybody did. I don't know that anybody thought that he was going to be the top running back or the first or second overall startup pick. But that's where he's at now. I mean, did you see that, Brad?
Yeah, I did not see it. I didn't see him
I was like,
going
don't lie.
high. No, no, agreeing with him. Yeah, I mean, I didn't need that because like he was one of the top backs in that class. It wasn't like people weren't like, "Oh, this guy's the next big thing." People just said, "Oh, he should be pretty good." So yeah,
Right. What
I'm
about you,
surprised,
Rob?
but
Like
he's earned it.
in that class, where did you have him ranked in that class of running backs? Because I think he was number 4 for me in that class.
Yeah, I know he wasn't one of the top 2. I mean, I think he's who the other running backs were, but
Fournette and Kamara, I remember. I know he was in the top.
I think Fournette was my 1 when it came to running backs. And I think
Dalvin Cook was my 1, Fournette was my 2, Mixon was my 3, and then McCaffrey was my 4.
was Kamara in that class? He might have been my 5 then.
Kamara wasn't like I didn't have him that high. I had him higher than a lot of people, but I had him at like 8 or 9 overall in that class. My running back 5, but like 8 or 9 overall, and then Kareem Hunt was also in that class.
Oh yeah.
And I had him like 10 or 11 overall in that rookie class, and my running back would have been 6, I think, if I'm remembering everybody right.
I do remember having Aaron Jones higher than most, though. He was one guy I loved in that draft class because wasn't Aaron Jones in that one too?
Aaron Jones was in that class. Tariq Cohen was in that class, and both those guys went like we did at that time. We were doing 3 rookie rounds, and those guys went undrafted in a lot of them. So there was a lot of value in that, like Marlon Mack in the 3rd round. But yeah, I mean that class is going to go down as one of the historical running back classes of all time. I mean, that's just gross, man. Two of the top 3, or all the top 3 from last year, were all in that class with Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, and Christian McCaffrey. That's just gross.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
When you had Fournette wasn't too far off from the top there, and
right.
If Dalvin Cook had stayed healthy, I mean, he was going to be high. Same with who was the other one who got hurt? Kamara. Kamara was, probably going to be all right if he didn't scored a few more touchdowns, would have helped, but he also missed some time with injuries. So I mean, that class just year in and year out can be our top 5, 6, 7 running backs.
Yeah, and we're talking about like Kareem Hunt even came back from his suspension and was, a viable fantasy starter, even splitting with Chubb. And that dude might be, a top like 8 to 10 running back talent in the league, and he's probably 5th right now out of that class or something. It's just gross. So gross. But, when we get into our top 10 running backs, we'll talk about some of those guys and why we have them there. And good on Christian McCaffrey. Out of all the running backs, if I was going to pay one, him and Saquon are about the only 2, because I think Saquon's got the body type to hold up. I mean, that dude's just thick, and we've seen how quickly he heals. And then McCaffrey just, even if he loses rushing touches, like, he's going to be a guy that's a threat to catch 100 balls out of the backfield every year, so he's going to be able to maintain that value even on limited rushing attempts. So definitely think that those 2 guys are the only ones that I would be even willing to entertain that type of contract for a running back.
Yeah, I think that contract is a lot. I think Joe Mixon, though, has also earned himself a contract, if hopefully not with the Bengals unless they improve the line, but somebody better pay that guy. I still think he's one of the better backs.
Dude, like in that class, he was the guy that I thought was the most talented, but I didn't have him at number one because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Character.
Obviously,
Yeah.
the character issues and everything like that, we didn't know what was going to happen with him, and that was the only reason why he wasn't my 101. I thought he was the most talented when it came to rushing and receiving. Maybe that's not the case because of Christian McCaffrey and even Dalvin Cook. They all ended up, well, all of them really ended up being really good in both facets of the game. Um, but yeah, I mean the talent's there, and with the right team and the right usage, I wouldn't be surprised if Mixon had a running back one overall um, season at some point in the next couple of years. Um, and when Bill Belichick comes out and says he might be the best running back in the league, like
Says a
you
lot.
don't hear Bill Belichick give people praise very often. So yeah, you have to take note of that.
Mhm.
All right,
We
why don't we
do.
get
I
in?
was going to say we do have one other little tidbit. Speaking of Bill Belichick, I don't know if you guys want to talk about the Damian Harris news that they expect him to get more action this year. That came out
Uh,
yesterday, 2 days ago.
I missed it, so I'll let Rob take it first.
Yeah, well, that sounds it sounds great if it happens, but I think we all know kind of the history with Bill Belichick and that backfield and those running backs, and you never know any given game who's going to get the most, and you never know. Bill Belichick plays things so close to the vest that more work could be 5 carries instead of 4. I don't know.
More work could mean he's a blocker, you know.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. I mean, hard to say.
well, for one, it's hard not to get more work than he got last year. So that should be said first. Two, we know that Bill Belichick will use a wide number of guys. So here's my question: Is it you remember the blunt treatment that we saw quite a bit, where he would be inactive for games, and then in certain games he would be active. So it was like they played matchups, and
Mm-hmm.
they've done that with running backs a lot, where they're inactive for 4 straight games, and then all of a sudden they have a 4 touchdown game, and you're like, what the hell?
I know.
Where'd that come from?
New England's so
So
ridiculous with running backs.
and here's the thing, like, does that get better or does that get worse with Brady leaving, or does it not affect it at all?
Well, I think they're going to have to lean on the running game more, just until they get whoever's the quarterback up to speed. I mean, because you always hear people talk about how complex the New England offense is. So if that is the case, they're going to have to lean on the running game to set up the pass, maybe a little more than they had in previous years. But either way, that's still, I mean, they're still going to parade 78 running backs through the backfield next year. And it's like, how can you trust any of them? I mean, Sony Michel has a ton of talent, but I'm not going to pay a lot for him because I know he's not going to get love every week, And Damian Harris, if he was cheap last year in your draft, yeah, I'd take him in the third round or whatever it was he went, but I just don't trust him.
Third round, I think he went in one league I saw, or I had. He was first round pick. So
Yeah, there was.
that was a
I think
bad
I seen him
call.
at the back end of the first round in some.
did you really? I was,
But I
I could
mean,
be wrong, but I felt like somewhere in one of the leagues I had him, I got him as a
so
stash guy.
so let's
That would
just
be great.
say they run the ball. They run the ball 30 times. Is it 8 rushes by Sony, 8 rushes by Damian Harris, 8 rushes by Rex Burkhead, and 6 by James White? Is that how we get to 30?
And that would be so
Yeah,
frustrating.
It's
yeah.
so true though. It's crazy.
I think
Um.
if Damian Harris, I'm guessing, if I remember right, that maybe some pass blocking had to do with him not getting a whole lot of playing time. If he's got that a little bit figured out, whatever it is, I mean, Sony Michel has, not looked like a horse for a while back there. Even for a New England system where able to take that backfield over and actually have a good game for those couple of games in a row. I still feel like James White runs the ball better than last year than Sony Michel did. So if Damian Harris can come in and run the ball and be successful and be getting those bigger chunk plays and having a good average, I think he could really take that lead back position in that committee.
Well, I think before any of those running back, I don't think any of those running backs are good enough to have consistent success without them drastically improving that offensive line, because that was really bad last year. And James White can get outside, but I don't think they had a lot of success. Anybody had a lot of success running in between the tackles. So, um, it's a backfield that I'm not like. If I was starting any leagues right now, I would not be looking to get any of those running backs in that backfield except for James White because of the PPR upside. Um, but I avoid pretty heavily, you know, outside of him.
And even him, now that he's getting older, I would start considering, when do I sell him?
Yeah, depending on what league you're in and your format and what position your team's in, I just think that I would not sell him before this season, because if they go in with Stidham as the starting quarterback, James White is going to be a huge part of that offense. It is going to be a lot of checkdowns to James White, and you're going to get more value out of him in season than you're going to get right now if you try to trade him. I mean, in leagues that we started up this offseason where running backs have a premium on receptions, I got him for like 1% of the my budget.
Wow.
And that's too cheap for James White in a format like that where you're heavily awarded, receptions as a running back. So people just aren't that high on him. So I would definitely hold him until you see what, even if they drafted Fromm, they're gonna check down the James White a lot. He's gonna be a big part of this offense, in that passing game. So I think holding until the season is the best move if you're an owner of James White for sure. I can't see who is. I see Facebook user is the big contract to curse. Sell McCaffrey now.
Yeah, Patrick Davis was asking that over on Facebook.
Well, I'll be honest. I think that McCaffrey's a strong sell, and not because I'm worried necessarily about production, but when you get 400 touches and then a lot of people have him 101, and if he's not 101, it's Saquon, and then McCaffrey at 102. So there's just a lot of value there. There's a lot of things that you can do for your team. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a title hunt, you don't want to be doing that. But I still think he's a strong sell candidate, but not because I think that he's going to necessarily lose value real fast. But there's not a lot of, you can't get much more valuable than he is right now. So if you're going to sell because you're not in a championship window, then now's the best time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Any thoughts on that, Rob?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think historically you look at back at anybody who's kind of, I think it's that 330 touch threshold. You've exceeded that, and numbers go down for the rest of their career. From that point forward, it's like every year it gets worse. Um, you know, Part of that is a little bit, I think, an obvious thing having to do with age, and obviously workloads go down in that. But when guys who've come back, after having that big year, the next year, most of the time they miss a few games, and their production just isn't as good. The other thing there is, you know, for McCaffrey, how is that offense going to change now? That's another thing to consider. There's a new scheme. I mean, to be honest, McCaffrey's a great talent, and you just paid him, so I imagine they're gonna use him, and they're not gonna write him out of the playbook too much. But you just don't know how things are gonna gel and come together, and they got some new weapons and a new quarterback and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot of question marks, I think, surrounding him going into this season.
Yeah, I definitely think their offense got better in the offseason, but at the same time, like I don't know. I think differently than a lot of people do, but if I pay a running back this much money, I want to get the 4 years out of him, and that probably means that I still use him, but I probably got to watch it and make sure that he doesn't get to that 400 touch mark again, to reserve his body to play out that contract. Did you guys hear how much of it's guaranteed?
I can tell you. Give me a second.
I didn't know if you had heard
Yeah,
off the top of
I'm
your head.
looking
I
at
am
that.
going to drop an article in the chat that I wrote on the Curse of 400 Touches, the Christian McCaffrey edition. If anybody wants to check that. Um, I wrote the first Curse of 400 on Le'Veon Bell, but then he decided to take a season off. And it's going to be very ironic if COVID wrecks the 2020 NFL season, and I write this article twice and curse that player's following season and not get the data that we're looking for. Um, okay,
Yeah, there's.
well,
Yeah, no, I don't see anything on the signing bonus yet. The contract details aren't out there.
I'm guessing there's a decent amount of that guaranteed, um, with it being the biggest contract, and maybe it's 75% 3 years that they're on the hook or whatever. But when that news comes out, we'll have a better idea about that. But all right, let's get into these top 10 wide receivers, and to start it off, like it's fairly easy because all three of us have the same top two, I believe, in the same order. So we can just cover those. There's not a lot to say about these guys. They're monsters. Um, Everybody saw the season that Michael Thomas had last year. All three of us have him as our number one receiver. And then newly traded Arizonian DeAndre Hopkins comes at number two. So why don't we quickly go through Michael Thomas first, and then we'll circle back with DeAndre Hopkins. But uh, what do you got to say, Rob, about Michael Thomas?
Well, Michael, coming off of his, just broke Marvin Harrison's catch record. Some interesting numbers. So I've been toying with the idea of moving Nuke up to my number one and Thomas down. And part of that was, I looked back at history, and Marvin Harrison, when he had his 143 yard receptions, he never caught more than 95 balls in a season after that. Thomas is also, so there's that potential chance. I mean, it is an outlier season. Don't expect Thomas to hit that again. Number two, Breeze is probably done after this year. So long term, is what's the offense going to look like there in New Orleans? Uh, but ultimately, I looked at his catch rate and that, and I mean, the number of balls he did on significantly fewer targets than Marvin Harrison. I think he's going to continue to catch the ball at a high rate, even if it doesn't turn into that many receptions again. But I think he's definitely a stud, and hopefully, if Breeze retires, they get somebody who can get him the ball.
Brad, what are you thinking? Because I think we have like the same opinion on that here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's a guy that's going to get a ton of targets, and he's a very good receiver. I mean, he catches most of the stuff that comes his way. When we talked about the top 10 receivers, like I think of the top 10 receivers, not only are they going to get the targets, but they're guys that are insulated in case of crappy quarterback play. As you'll see on the guys on my list, some of them had crappy quarterback play last year, but they still produced. Michael Thomas is one of those guys that it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, he's going to make plays and he's going to do well. And at his age, he's still got probably another good 5 years of solid production ahead. So I feel comfortable with him and DeAndre, easily for the next 3 to 5 years being in the top, 10 range of wide receivers. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for the better part of 3 years now, with all the talk with Breeze potentially retiring the past couple off seasons and everything. I'm not worried about Michael Thomas one bit. Michael Thomas doesn't rely on a big armed quarterback. He doesn't rely on a mobile quarterback. Nothing like that. He just gets open and he catches everything that comes his way. And yeah, there might be little nuances with a different quarterback, but I mean, you got to be really, really bad to not be able to get Michael Thomas the ball in the way that they use him. Um, so I'm not worried about that at all. Like they would have to sign me to be quarterback for him to lose value, and I mean, he'll probably catch what I throw him because he's just that good. So, you know, I might die in the process, but Michael Thomas put up numbers. Um, but yeah, I'm not worried about him at all in that regard. Hopkins, on the other hand, as he ages a little bit more, I could have been worried about that, but I don't think we have to worry about that because he just got moved to a spot where he's got a nice young quarterback. Not much of a down. It's probably a downgrade quarterback wise from Watson, but offense wise, it's probably an upgrade. So I think that evens out, and I like him probably a little bit more. I mean, I don't know that everybody understands how many plays Arizona runs, and what they were missing last year was a way to get into the end zone, especially before Kenyon Drake got there, and now they've got that receiving option to get them into the end zone. Hopkins could easily go for 1,315 touchdowns this year and win you your championships. I love him. He's been my number one or number two for 4 straight seasons. And this guy also, the other thing that I love about this guy is he does not come off the field. When he had that ankle injury and he was playing through it, somebody asked him about it, and his response was, I have 2 legs. One can be hurt. I have two. Like, that's what I want
Yeah.
out of my players. So, they go out there no matter what, and they're gamers. So I love
Well,
Hopkins. Those two, though, you can't go wrong with those two.
I couldn't believe when I looked up Arizona stats last year. They threw 554 passes last year. It's like that's disgusting. Like it's going to be amazing for him.
Yeah, targets galore, and he already got targets
Mhm.
galore. So that's awesome. Rob, what are you thinking about Hopkins?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, I was toying with moving him to my number one. Last 5 years, he's had at least 150 targets in every season. Uh, the the difference I think has been Houston. People could kind of key in on him a little bit, so the catch rate was down. I think there were a lot of balls that didn't get to him clean. Hopefully, with this 4 and 5 wide set, there's not enough defenders to go around. He's got a little more space. I mean, even if he drops, 20 targets to 130, but his catch rate goes up by, 10%. I mean, that's going to equate out to another, wide receiver one wide receiver two type finish, somewhere in that range, that top 5 range for sure for him. So I'm excited for him. I hope with that spread out, scheme that they're running out there, that it creates some more openings than we've seen over the last couple of years when defenses could key on him a little more.
So, Brad, did you have any other notes on Hopkins?
Well, I was just going to say, I actually, after the trade happened, I went to in a couple of my leagues trying to acquire him just to see what people were going to charge you for him, and I managed to get him in one league. I sent the offer I sent over was Cortland Sutton and Corey Davis, and the guy accepted it. So I wound up getting Hopkins for Sutton and Davis, which I love Corey Davis. I love Cortland Sutton, but I was like, I can't say no to that.
I hate when people say this, but can I get in that league?
Yeah, I know. I
I
know,
want to
right?
make I want to make trades with that guy. I
Well,
hope
and the
it was
funniest thing is
Paul.
he's one of the harder guys to trade with.
I hope
Like
it
I
was
never
Paul.
have luck with him.
I hope it was Paul. I want
No, it
I
wasn't
want you to
Paul.
fleece Paul. Um,
Just ask him about Justin Herbert. He'll say that I fleeced him on Justin Herbert in a Debbie league.
here is where we get a little bit different. All of us have a different number 3. I love to see it. Uh, why don't we start off with the one that surprised me the most? Brad. Who's that number 3 on your board? Um, Tell them why.
Well, for me, again, when we were talking about top 10, I'm thinking about guys that have, the 3 to 5 year value, can be insulated no matter who their quarterback is. They're going to see that kind of value. And Cooper Kupp is my number 3. Even with Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, all those options out there, last year he still had 134 targets and finished as a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. Brandon Cooks is out the door. I would expect Cooper Kupp to see even maybe a slight increase in targets. So he should have no problem staying in the top 5 of receivers. I don't see how this is, it's a no-brainer for me. I love Cooper Kupp. I mean, Rick loves Cooper Kupp just not as much as I love Cooper Kupp.
I do love Cooper Kupp, but he didn't crack my top 10.
Well, and I expect his targets to go up some. And that consistency, and I expect him to have a few more good years of value, that's a no-brainer for me. If somebody's going to move Kupp, I'll take him.
Oh, if somebody's going to move him, I'll take him. Just not that high. Rob, what do you think about Cooper Kupp at number 3? And then who is your number 3?
Well, I think that's interesting. I'm not as high on Kupp. I mean, I like Kupp.
They just said
bold move, Cotton. Bold move, Cotton.
Definitely not a number 3. I don't have him anywhere near that high. But I agree with the premise of everything Brad said. With Cooks gone, targets could go up here. That said, Cooks wasn't around too much this last season to steal targets, and there were some consistency issues there with Jared Goff getting him the football. So, that's just me. I think they got to work out that offense a little bit. They saw some major issues last year. My number 3 was Davante Adams. Aaron Rodgers' top target is always worth rostering in fantasy football, I think. And Adams he misses a couple of games, seemingly every season. But if you look, his per game points this year were one of the top in the league. The thing that hurt him was the touchdowns went down, and I think that had to do with just you can blanket him when there's nobody else who can catch a football in Green Bay. Hopefully that's solved in the draft this year. But the guy in 12 games had 997 yards. That's pretty darn good production. But he had his fewest touchdowns since his sophomore campaign with just 5. So, and I expect that he had 10 plus for 3 straight years. I expect him to be back in that 10 touchdown range. And, I think easily with another target there to steal some defensive pressure, very easily going to get his second 1,000-yard season.
Brad, you had this guy way lower than we did. And you had him where Cooper Kupp probably should have been. You had them flip-flop maybe. What are your thoughts? Why are you not as high on Adams as the public?
Well,
sway us.
Well, I'm not here to sway you. What I'm here to say is this is why we're splitting hairs in the top 10 ultimately. I mean, these guys are all really good players. I don't like Adams as much just because of the Green Bay offense as a whole is it just left a lot to be desired. Yeah, he produced really well in 12 games, but he still wouldn't have been much higher than, wide receiver 15, 16, depending on how your league scores. When I was looking through as I was prepping for the show, I was looking to see kind of where he landed last year. He was like wide receiver 20, 23, somewhere around there. And I was really surprised. So I just started digging around, and I'm like, wow, even if he would have continued on that production, he wouldn't have cracked the top 10 wide receivers, depending on how your league scores. But, I expect the touchdowns to go up a little bit next year. I would hope, they have to put somebody around him to catch the ball. They've got to give them some more options. I think they made the step in the right direction, getting rid of Jimmy Graham. I think it's addition by subtraction in that case. But I need to see more from Adams. I mean, that 3 games a year is kind of what you can expect. And with the guys that I have ahead of them, I don't expect those guys to miss much time. And, Adams, for me, that kind of all put it together made me go, well, as I was looking through these guys, I was like, well, I like this guy more because of these reasons. And, and it just he wound up at 10. For me, I like all 10 of these guys a lot, and I'd be willing to trade for them anywhere I can get them.
I'm trying to pull it up here because I'm pretty sure like on a per game basis, Adams was like the wide receiver 3 or something of guys that played at least 10 games. Um,
Adam Gruce, our resident Packers fan, somewhat agrees with me.
who?
He thinks Adam Gruce, our guru with the words, says he thinks Adam
Well, yeah,
says peak.
I just didn't hear his name the first time.
Oh, sorry.
Um, I'm trying to get to this right here real quick. Let's see. Well, first I'll say Adams is my number 4, and I actually flipped my 3 and 4. So I had him at 3 at one point, and then moved him out. But uh, Adams had the 6th highest average, so that's pretty good. Um, but yes, I mean there are the injury concerns, there are the concussion concerns. But I've always said, and I'm a Bears fan, so the more I have to talk about Packers that I like, the more it disgusts me, and that's why I know Jalen Reagor is going to go there, and it's going to disgust me heavily. But he had one of those big concussions playing against Chicago when Trevathan, like, I mean, it was one of those hits where, like, I don't care who you are, you're having a concussion. It wasn't a Jordan Reed or, um, you know, and I'm not saying that to be mean, but Jordan Reed, it doesn't take a big hit to give him a concussion at this point. Or Percy Harvin when he was playing, those guys were susceptible to the concussion, and I know that 2 of them that Adams had were like just major hits to the head, where anybody's gonna have a concussion, and so that never really worried me. But the dude is just a monster, and yeah, his value, he needs help there. Um, they did most of their damage on the ground last year with Aaron Jones and his touchdowns. Obviously, that's going to regress some, and that's likely going to help Adams in the touchdown category. But when this guy's on the field, you want him in your lineup as your wide receiver 1, and you're not really worried about him having success, especially from a PPR standpoint, because he's going to get a ton of targets. So I have him at 4, so we'll be able to skip him on my 4th pick. But at 3, I have Amari Cooper, and I see that I am much higher on Amari Cooper than um, Brad doesn't even. You didn't even have him in the top 10, and I think he came in 10th for Rob. So this is my Cooper Cup. But this is a guy I think people forget is 25 years old. And they feel like he's older because he's been around forever. He's got, what, 4,000-yard seasons under his belt now. Um, and, there was the drop issue a couple years ago, where he had 3 on one drive and 6 in 3 games, and then only had 3 the rest of the year, and people freaked out and said this dude can't catch. And then for whatever reason, uh, Gruden decided not to utilize him and then traded him, and he does have the big games. There are some games where he puts up duds for you, but he's more consistent than people give him credit for. And this is a guy that can win you weeks, and he's still 25, can still get better. And I want every bit of Amari Cooper that I can get.
Well, the nice thing about him is what you're going to get. You're going to probably get 75 to 80 catches a year, and that's a nice, good number to get out of a guy. I think he's a wide receiver 1. He's just not in my top 10. I never really worried so much. I mean, he had that trouble with the Raiders, but that offense as a whole stunk. I mean, I didn't blame him. If you watch the tape, a lot of those drops weren't necessarily his fault. Where the ball's placed, he can't determine that. So he was trying to make all sorts of crazy catches. But I like Amari Cooper. He's a good wide receiver 1. If he is your wide receiver 1, you're perfectly fine with him. So, I don't hate on you for putting him this high. I mean, obviously I'm crazy. I like guys named Cooper too. So what do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I'm just not an Amari Cooper fan. I know he he produced well. That 18-game stretch to start with Dallas is, that's a historic pace, or over the season and a half there. But then the second half of the year, we saw kind of the same trend developing. I feel like we saw in Oakland. That first year, his rookie year in Oakland, his start of his sophomore year, he was strong, and then he just kind of fell off. And now we're looking at the same thing possibly in Dallas. I just don't trust him. I don't know what it is. I haven't trusted him. I think he's a great talent. I just feel like he disappears, and that's for me why he's not in my top 10.
Yeah, I mean, he is one of the type of receivers that is boom or bust per se. But again, my thing is 5 years, four of them over 1,000 yards, and the dude's still not 26 years old yet. And that's just amazing. He turns 26 in June, so he will be playing this season at 26, and there's still more room to advance. But Brad, why don't you go on to your number 4?
This will be another Cooper Cup. This guy at number 4 is because of what I liked out of him so far, plus what I expect out of him in the future. So I have Cortland Sutton from Denver as my number 4. The guy is consistent no matter who the quarterback is. He was successful with Joe Flacco. He was successful with Brandon Allen. He was successful with Drew Lock. Even before this year, the guy he had over 1,000 yards a year before with just not a great offense around him. He's averaging the last 2 seasons 125 plus targets, and I only see that getting Lock at the helm. The thing I like about him is not only he does a good job beating double coverage, he does a good job going and getting those contested catches. In a fantasy perspective, he does a really good job being a consistent. He finished the year right around the 15 overall wide receiver wise. He's consistent on a weekly basis. Now he didn't have a great average last year. So average on a week, was like 12, 13 points. So it doesn't show you that he's going to be, but I believe this kid has only got, I think he's probably got another good 5 years of really good production where he's getting 125 to 130, 40 targets and catching most of them. He's a good receiver, and I'm a big fan of him. Rob, how crazy am I?
I don't think you're that crazy at all. I've got him as my number 10. I was just messaging Rick. I don't know what I did looking at my list of wide receivers, but I totally gave him a false list after about 4. So I'm about to resend it to him. But Sutton I like Sutton a lot. I think I've talked about it the last couple of weeks. If Denver's come up a bit, that I really like Drew Lock and the way that offense is going. Noah Fant. I think they draft another wide receiver, and I think this is going to become one of the better passing offenses in the league. And I'm a huge, huge fan, and I think he very easily could be moving up this list quickly.
Rick?
Well, I'm checking the submitted rankings to make sure that Rob's not changing them on the fly here.
We're selling.
Did you just move Amari Cooper out of your top 10?
I had meant to have him down earlier. Yes.
You sold him so well that he now hates Amari Cooper. Way to go, Rick.
Oh, let's see. Sutton, I like Sutton. He just wasn't good enough to crack my top 10. There's a lot of young guys that I struggled with because they were on the border of me putting them in there. And when guys are close, I'm going to look and see, 1, who is safer, or 2, who has the upside to get to the top of that wide receiver group. Is it possible for this guy to, put up one of them 16 to 18 touchdown seasons and be the number one overall, or can he go for 110 receptions and get up there in that way? How can these players work their way up? So, when I was making this list and I looked at those guys, there were just some where I said, right now with the way that it looks in Broncos, like I'm not as high on Drew Lock. Like I think Drew Lock's decent, but I don't know that I like him enough that I think he's, that with Sutton's talent and with Drew Lock, that combines for a wide receiver one. Um, if it was, Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball, then it takes less skill from Sutton. Not that he's not skilled, but just when I compare him to my top 10, he didn't make it. But I still like him, and I'll still take him on every team. I don't dislike him at all. Um, let's see. That was your number four, right? So we need Rob's number four, but who knows who his number four
Oh,
is
that
because he's.
that one didn't change. You know what I did when I sent you the list? I forgot. Uh, I somehow skipped over Sutton and Diggs before Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen, and then I also skipped AJ Brown before I got to Cooper. But I also forgot Godwin and Evans, which is nuts. I don't know. I love Tampa Bay's offense, and especially Chris Godwin. I don't know how I did that. But anyways, digress. To my number four, Tyreek Hill is my number four. So speaking to Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball, Tyreek Hill is fast. I mean, that's the amazing thing. I want to watch the highlight every day last year where he tracked down was a Damian Williams running away from everybody, and he races down Damian Williams from behind. And Damian Williams is fast. I mean, it was crazy. And, he's going to put up good numbers. He's got the best quarterback in the league. There's really only one other person on that team to rival him for catches. It's going to be Travis Kelce right now. I mean, as long as Reek is not missing games, which, not being suspended last year definitely kept him in that top 10 conversation. Got to stay out of trouble, and he's going to be one of the top wide receivers.
Brad, what are you thinking there, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, he slid down the rankings to me basically just on the character concerns. I mean, obviously last year wasn't a good picture for his overall value. When he missed the better part of 5 games, that'll hurt your value. When you look at his per game average, though, he was kind of up in the in the upper echelon. So he's one of those guys. If you have him, he's got to be in there because he's going to get you really good games. I just don't. He's a wide receiver one for me, but him and Cooper are probably the two that would be like my 11 and 12. They're really talented, but Tyreek for me, like I want to go in every season knowing that you're not going to get yourself in trouble and lose me games because you're not on the field. So that bumped him down a list a little bit for me, and that's really the only issue. I love the guy; he's a great receiver. He's got great skill. It is a little weird that they have his replacement already on the team. Like they drafted Mecole Hardman kind of to fill that role just in case he wasn't going to be there. So I don't know if that's really going to be accurate or not because I don't think Mecole Hardman nearly catches the ball as well as Tyreek does. But we'll see. He's still a wide receiver one and should be for probably another 3 to 5 years as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah,
Rick?
I mean, that's the hard part is that the character issues. I was one of the guys when that tape came out last year that said this guy should never be able to play again. But then we find out how edited the tape was and how doctored it was, and then whether it's true or not, like we don't have all the information, so it's really hard to know what's true and what's not in that whole situation. But the dude is just too good. He's my number 5, so I had Rob's got my 4 and 5 at his 3 and 4. Um, but the dude's just like you said, when you got a guy with a cannon like Mahomes that can get out of the pocket and make every throw, and then you've got Tyreek that can get open at any time. Like they're a touchdown threat on every single play, and I want it as much as I can get it on my teams. Um, the injuries, I'm not that concerned yet. I think last year he landed on his shoulder or something and diving for a pass, and I think that's how he got injured the first time. I might be mistaken, um, but I think that was the big issue. I thought he was gonna. I thought he was another one. Him and Saquon both. I thought were gonna be out longer than they. Well, and Mahomes. I thought all three of them were gonna be out longer. But I'm gonna use that term that some people in our group don't like. They're not human. They're freaks of nature, and they're all amazing. So I definitely had him just one pick lower um, because of my Amari Cooper love that I've got up there at number 3. Let's see. So that was your number 4. We got your number 4, and I don't ever get to name one of my players because they're already off other people's boards. Um, Number 5, Brad. Why don't we start with you at number 5?
Well, 5 and 6 are both from the same team for me, and it's just because I like them
Number
both a lot.
5.
Number 5 is Mike Evans. Um, Bruce Arians, I love his offense. Like, I wish more people in the league would put up an offense like his because he just produces valuable wide receivers. Mike Evans, I think is amazing. He's a good. I think the addition of Tom Brady will only be better for all of the skill position players on that team. Um, so it's hard to not like him. Obviously, 2019 wasn't great for him because he got hurt a little bit. And that's tough. But he's still when you look at his per game average, he was one of the top 10 receivers if you look at his actual per game average fantasy points. So I'm a big fan of him. There's not much more I can say. Rob, what do you think about Mike Evans?
Oh, I like Mike Evans a lot. I had him a little bit further down on my list at number 7 once I actually read my list correctly. I guess if I put on my glasses before we started this, I probably would see what my actual players were. But no, he's a very good player. I think the one thing with Mike Evans a little bit is that you run into when's he going to throw up that goose egg? He did that this year. The one concern I have moving forward with Brady is how does that offense change, and is there going to be as much of that down the field, and might that production go down a little bit, and might those those days with 1 or 2 catches increase for Mike Evans. But that said, I still think Brady can get the ball downfield. It's just how they kind of tailor that offense between Bruce Arians and Tom Brady and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't disagree on Mike Evans at all. This is another guy that I've got, coming up in my rankings. Um, he would actually be higher on my rankings if it wasn't for the fact that I do think that he could be downgraded a little bit with Brady. Um, I'm not sure how that's going to work out because we haven't seen Brady with a guy like him in quite a while. Um, so there is a little bit of concern for me there, but I mean, Mike Evans is a monster, and hopefully either it works out and Brady does well, or this doesn't last a full 2 years and we get true Mike Evans back. But I mean, no matter what anybody thinks, there's going to be a regression in that area. There might be more consistency, but the 45-point games probably aren't going to happen as frequently with somebody like Brady when you just got rid of a quarterback that's just chuck it up and let's see what happens. You're more more likely to have those huge games that Mike Evans is capable of having with Jameis Winston rather than Tom Brady. But we might see a more consistent 15-point game output, um, and he might help you week to week more with less week winning weeks. If that all made sense. Got into a
Perfect
little tongue
sense.
twister there. Um, So Brad, you gave your opinion on Evans, right? So now we need your. Oh, that was yours. So number 5. Oh well, I don't know what Rob's list is, so he might not quit stealing my dudes before I can talk about him. Who's your number 5 there, Rob?
My number 5 is Odell. I know he's coming off some tough years, but OBJ is second year in that offense. I think things are gonna, or second year on that team. I think things are gonna get better here. If you look at his numbers, the only really glaring thing to me was he didn't catch a lot of touchdowns. Um, his catch percentage was the lowest it's been in his career, but Baker wasn't exactly sharp last year. He's been doing some stuff to work out. You're seeing him trying to maybe get rid of that dad bod a little bit, maybe become a better athlete and a better quarterback, hopefully. But the 4 touchdowns for Beckham, that's low, especially for a year where he played all those games. His previous career low, playing 12 or more games, was 6. So at least should have seen a couple more, we'd hope. But, I still think there's Odell's an otherworldly talent at wide receiver. It's just finding him more consistent production. And I think as time went on in New York, and that's what kind of soured in New York, Eli got worse and it got harder to get him the ball consistently in a good place to catch it. Baker wasn't great at that last year, so Baker's got to improve for that number 5 to hold true. But I still think just on talent, Odell belongs definitely in the top 5.
Yeah, he's got talent. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, he's a really nice high-end wide receiver too right now because he hasn't really produced that top 10 production since what, 2016? It's like he's
Yeah.
so good at making spectacular catches, but for some reason the consistency and those insane high levels of stats just haven't been there. And I blame the teams more than I blame him. It has nothing to do with him, but with Stefanski there, I don't know if this is really going to make it a bump for him or if it's just going to make the whole team better, because they have a lot of good weapons. Then they add Austin Hooper to go with Njoku and Jarvis Landry, and it's just like they just have so many options. I almost feel like they're going to cannibalize each other a little bit. And I think Odell's going to be a really great wide receiver too. And some weeks he'll be a wide receiver 1 number wise, but it's like I just don't know if we're going to see 2016, 2015, 2014 Odell anymore. And that's sad because the dude's insanely talented. I mean, he makes highlight reel catches every season, but I'm worried about the overall ceiling for him. Rick, what do you think about OBJ?
Well, I would I would say that he's as talented as anybody on any of these lists that we've put together. Um, the concerns with him are obviously headspace and Cleveland. you know, um, everything goes wrong in Cleveland. So, but this is a guy that has played last year with a really bad Baker Mayfield, and then the season before, and before, and before, and before with really
With
bad
a
Eli
really bad
Manning.
Eli.
Um, and it hasn't worked out, but he's as talented as anybody. He showed me something last year playing through a sports hernia. Um, didn't have the stats. The dude still actually he went over 1,000 yards last year, right? And
Yep.
we're all bitching about how
Hmm?
bad of a year it was, and he played with a sports hernia and went over 1,000 yards. I had a hernia a few years ago and had to have surgery, and I know how bad it sucked. So for him to be playing in the NFL with one, he earned a little bit of the respect back there. 2 years ago, he was my 101 with Hopkins, 102, um, and I would not be surprised if he went out and ended up being the top receiver this year. I think that he's got the skill. For one, Cleveland made the biggest mistake by hiring Kitchens as their coach last year. We know how that worked out, and that offense was putrid. It was terrible, and that didn't benefit anybody on that offense from a fantasy perspective. The touchdowns were limited and everything for everybody. So I see a bounce back, and this is the third guy in a row that I had one spot below where Rob had them. Um, so yeah, we get to skip another one
So
of.
why don't you go first with number 6? Oh wait, I already took them. Never mind.
Yeah, and my number seven's already gone too. So I would have to skip all the way to 8. So it's just not working out in my favor. But that's fine because we're talking about all these guys and we have a lot of overlap. And then we have some guys, the Mari Coopers and Cooper Cubs, and I don't know Rob's list, so I don't know if he's got any that.
I Facebook you it.
Oh, I don't have Facebook up, so I can't see it.
Oh, because I can't really do it on my phone because I'm using my phone as the camera here. So
Right. Nope.
because my
You're good.
computer's
You're
no good.
good. Okay. So we got the number fives done, and then number 6. I'm gonna. Yeah, I'm just not gonna talk about anybody anymore. Number 6, Rob. Why don't you go? Why don't you go with number 6 there for us, buddy?
Well, I'm going to go opposite of Brad on Tampa Bay. My number 6, and the guy I have higher between the two is Chris Godwin.
It's not one of my guys.
But it's
right.
it's my guy at number 6.
Good.
Yeah. No, I love Chris Godwin. He's a guy that I bought early as a rookie and kind of sat on him. And I knew the talent was there and was just waiting for the production. And finally, Adam Humphries got out of there. Well, Dirk Cotter got out of there, thankfully, which got Adam Humphries out of there to finally let a better player. Not that Adam Humphries is bad by any means. He's a very solid receiver, but finally let the more talented, I think, Chris Godwin, loose, let him off the leash a little bit last year, and we saw what he can do. His consistency, his production. I mean, he was the more consistent receiver between him and Mike Evans. He produced. I mean, while they were both healthy, they were 1-2 all year. Even with missing several games, Godwin finished as the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy football. I think number 1 is easily achievable. I also think that with Tom Brady coming in, Godwin is the type of receiver who has most succeeded in a Brady-led offense. The guy that plays the slot, that Julian Edelman type, Wes Welker type role. And so I just expect his numbers to be solid. And I actually expect him to probably be stronger in PPR. I think he's going to see more passes and maybe not have as much of the downfield stuff as he had last year with Jameis.
Brad, I'll let you go since this guy didn't crack my top 10.
He was number 6 for me as well, so I got nothing to say. I mean, Rob nailed it. Godwin's good. I mean, the only reason that I put Evans above Godwin, and it's literally one spot above him, is that that bigger receiver with the bigger catch radius, kind of that bigger window for Brady to throw at. I think he might like that. He's enjoyed that in the past with some of the bigger receivers he's had. But either one could easily be, a wide receiver 1, and I wouldn't be surprised. Godwin's super talented and young enough that you're going to get a good 5 to 6 years of really good production out of him without me even being too concerned. So I'm a fan of both. I like them both. And why don't you have him in the top 10, Rick?
There's one thing that people keep forgetting about Tampa Bay last year, and that's 32 interceptions and 6 fumbles by their quarterback. That's 38 turnovers. What happens when you turn the ball over? The other team scores, and now you're trailing. They trailed a lot, they threw a lot, and I don't think you're going to see that. Tom Brady is not going to turn the ball over. And I think there's going to be a lot less attempts to be spread around. And the reason why I have Mike Evans ahead of him is because Mike Evans takes less targets to put up fantasy points. Um, I don't think that. I mean, I don't know that Godwin's volume is going to be able to maintain without turning that ball over. Um, when you throw 7 pick sixes, you get the ball right back and go back out on the field, and you're now trailing by more than you were before. So you got to keep chucking it up. I don't like that offense is going to be good. I just don't see um, them throwing the ball as much as they had to the past 2 seasons. Because even with Ryan Fitzpatrick, their defense was terrible that year, and they were trailing the whole time, and it was just a chuck it up and pray offense, and that's not what you're going to get with Tom Brady. You're not going to get that. It is going to be more, um, uh, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, they're gonna have a lot of they're gonna be ball control quite a bit. I mean,
And
Tom Brady likes to run down the clock.
And I fully expect Tampa Bay to bring in a really good pass catching running back. And who even knows, with Brady coming in there and the way that he, has had success in the past with James White and other running backs catching the ball, even if they don't get that running back that we all hope they get, they tried getting whatever his name is, Ogunaway or whatever his name is. Like, he's
Agumba Wale.
a Goombawale. Okay, you're the name guy for sure. But he's a good pass catching running back, and who knows what could happen with him and Brady, even if they don't bring anybody in. But I just don't think the volume's going to be there because this offense isn't going to be turning the ball over 40 times a season with Tom Brady at the helm. And if they're in the lead, they're gonna run the ball more, and with that defense, they should be. So we could see a big dip in their pass volume, and I think that's one of the aspects that Mike Evans is insulated from because of one, his touchdown upside, and two, he's never needed that many targets. He's always got them because, before Godwin got there, they didn't really have a really good number two, but he can still put up those points while it may hurt Godwin if that pass volume drops. So that's why. It's not that I don't like Godwin. It's just that when I look at some of these other younger guys, um, I'm more confident in them maintaining or gaining on that top 10 than I do him maintaining it, even though he got the number two. We've seen plenty of guys have number two seasons at any position and then drop out and never see top 10 again. So um, I'm just not as confident. I'm pulling my list back up here. Who's up next? Number 7. Mine's already been said, so you can skip me.
Mine's been said. Mine's Mike Evans, so you can skip me.
Mine has not been said, so I'll get to go.
Yeah, there you go. Don't pick my next guy, so then I can go first next round.
Well, maybe we should skip to you because I probably will. My next guy is Keenan Allen.
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Well, there we go. All right. So at 7, I got Keenan Allen. As I was prepping and putting this together, I was kind of looking through and just kind of getting a feel for, I know he wasn't old by any stretch. He's only 27. Like, the dude's not insanely old. He's probably got good production left. Obviously the biggest concern with him is what is he without Phillip Rivers? The way that he plays and the way that he's so good at catching anything that comes his way. I think even if they trot Tyrod Taylor out there, because of the way that they move him around the formation, he can be in the slot, he can be on the outside, that he should still get the lion's share of targets. I still feel comfortable with him in the top 10, at least for another couple of years. This is the one, as I was doing, I'm like, dude, I could be completely stupid by the end of the season. Like, if they trot Tyrod Taylor out there and he just sucks all year and this whole offense blows, this time next year I'll look back and say, dude, I'm stupid. But I feel good about it. I like the talent. Keenan Allen's always been a super talented guy, and I felt comfortable here at 7. What do you think, Rob?
I agree with everything you said. I think I have Keenan Allen just inside my top 10. Like you said, Tyrod, there's some questions there with how that's all going to work out. I think overall he's a perennially undervalued player. I mean, the last 3 years have been, just shy. 4 combined yards shy of 1,200 yard seasons the last two, and then he had almost 1,400 yards the year before. The thing Keenan Allen doesn't do a lot of is score touchdowns. He's not been a big touchdown producer, and you get a lot of points on touchdowns. I mean, so that's the one area that kind of keeps him down my board. But he catches a lot of balls and he gets a lot of yards, so he kind of makes up for that. I have him, like I said, he's just borderline top 10 for me.
Yeah,
Rick.
he probably would have been 11 or 12 for me. And the same with Godwin. Godwin and Keenan would probably have been my 11 and 12 if we went top 12. So they were right there. My question would be, with Melvin Gordon gone, he had been the guy that had been scoring a lot of touchdowns for them. Where are these touchdowns going to go now if that offense, maintains, which I think they could? I mean, Tyrod Taylor can't really play worse than Phillip Rivers last year, right? Like, Phillip Rivers played really bad. He was probably, the third worst quarterback in the league last year. You know, not for fantasy purposes, but for real NFL purposes. Um, but and I'm talking about guys that started most of the year, the Trubiskys and Winstons and Rivers, not the David Fales and other guys that were brought in off the couch while uh, uh, Sam Darnold had mono and all that kind of stuff, or the guys over there in Detroit that were the Jeff Driscolls of the world. I'm talking about the guys that actually played the full season. But yeah, the dude's gonna catch a bunch of targets, but if he gets that touchdown bump with Melvin Gordon being gone, um, but maybe it doesn't happen, and maybe it goes to the Hunter Henrys and the Mike Williams. Mike Williams, it's crazy. The dude only had 2 touchdowns last year. The year before, he had 10, but he didn't have the yards. And then it like flip flopped. So does he put together that 1,000 yard, 10 touchdown season next year? It's very possible. So it's a weird dynamic in Los Angeles right now for the Chargers, and I honestly, when I look at that offense, I don't know what to do with a lot of those pieces. It's a confusing spot for me personally.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
they should go back to San Diego. They've been lost since they moved to LA
Right?
offensively.
Philip
yeah. I
Rivers
think
started driving back and forth and throwing 8,000 interceptions. Somehow Booger McFarland took him from a shoe-in Hall of Famer pregame to a borderline Hall of Famer after a game in which Philip Rivers threw 4 interceptions. Like, Booger, how does he go from a shoe-in to a borderline guy in one game? Like, I don't care how bad the game was. Like, that doesn't negate the 15 years prior that he's been playing.
yeah, he's booger.
Brad, you were getting ready to say something.
Well,
I
I
didn't
was
mean to
just
cut you off.
really the only guy I'm comfortable with in the offense outside of Keenan Allen is, as much as I like Mike Williams, is Austin Eckler. I mean, they paid him a big contract. You got to think they're going to use him. He produced really well last year. Like, I feel good about a couple of the pieces of the offense, but I'd feel more comfortable if I knew what the if anybody other than Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback. Like, I'm just not a big Tyrod fan. So even if they brought a rookie in, I'd feel more comfortable with the team long term. It's this unknown of what are they going to do at quarterback.
I personally have never I've always thought that Tyrod's kind of got a bad rap everywhere he's been, and then that injury in
All
Cleveland.
84 teams.
I mean, really, he's only played in Buffalo and Cleveland before Los Angeles. Um,
Yeah, and didn't Baltimore draft him, right?
Baltimore drafted him, but Baltimore, I mean, also has kind of had had that quarterback position locked up for quite a while with Flacco then going to, Lamar. So never really had a chance there to crack that. After Flacco won that Super Bowl and got paid a bunch of money, you're not putting in anybody when you pay a guy as much money as they paid Flacco. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've never been as low as a lot of people. I think he kind of got. I don't want to say screwed in Cleveland, but never really had an opportunity. Hugh Jackson, I mean, they've had some really great coaches. And then that injury where I thought he broke his arm on that one play. And then he came back in later that game, and I was like, that dude's like made of metal or something. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that offense is confusing for me, though. I just don't know what's going to happen with that going forward. They've got a lot of moving pieces there. Um, yes, I finally get to be the first guy to talk about somebody, and whether that's good or not. My number 8 is Juju Smith-Schuster. Um, we were talking about Godwin earlier, and one of the reasons why I didn't have him in the top 10, um, or that it was a surprise I didn't have him in my top 10, but we haven't talked about Juju Smith-Schuster until number 8. And this was a guy that just a year ago had 160 some targets. I think was he wide receiver 3
Yeah, he was up there.
in 2018, and now here we are. He's down to 8, and he's a guy that's 23. Um, I, if I'm guessing he's at least a year younger than Godwin, and maybe 2. Um, but last year was unfortunate. Big Ben goes down. Um, I thought he was too high last year. He was at, he was a top 12 pick in most startups. And I thought that was a little high because I did see some regression with Antonio Brown leaving, facing, being the focus of a defense. For a young receiver like that, even with success, um, it's a harder job to have. But then it's just impossible when it's Mason Rudolph and uh, Hodges throwing you the ball, and when the running game's not working, their running game was terrible. The, when he was on the field, all the attention was on him. Um, I think that wide receiver core has a chance to mature and be pretty good there in Pittsburgh. But Juju's the most talented out of the bunch, and he's still really young. And Big Ben's coming back, and we're gonna find out in 2020 if it was all the injury, all Big Ben not being there, or if he is going to struggle a little bit as he matures, being the focal point of a defense, um, whereas he hadn't had to be that before. Because I think even the games that Antonio Brown missed uh, earlier in Juju's career, it wasn't until like game day that Antonio Brown was ruled out. Like he was never ruled out like a week in advance so that the teams could key in on Juju. It was, Sunday morning Antonio Brown was told to leave the locker room or something, and then kind of a surprise attack on the team. But we're gonna see. But I think that a lot of people are, uh, you know, they took one season. You can have people have bad seasons, a bad half a season, um, and people drop them big time, and people have great seasons, and then you never see anything from them again. And I would put money on Juju getting back to that, you know, top tier wide receiver than I would Godwin, and that's one of the reasons why Godwin wasn't on my list, um, because I'd rather have Juju there.
Yeah, I mean he's super talented, and that's what you want from your high end wide receivers. Young, very talented, the potential to be big, big scorer. I mean, and Juju has that. Like, I don't have a problem with you having him in your top 10 because he's easily in that conversation. I mean, obviously, last year you kind of have to give most of that offense a mulligan, or I should say, most of those receivers a mulligan
I was gonna say,
because
except for the or quarterbacks.
yeah, yeah. I mean, those wide receivers get a mulligan in my book. James Washington, Deontay Johnson, Juju. They all, I'll give them a pass, and we'll just kind of see what this year looks like. My gut tells me this year's not going to be much better because I think Ben is, kind of toast at this point. Like once they get a better quarterback in, I think things will get better for him. But those guys are all young enough to still be productive for another 5 to 7 years. So I think in the top 10 is a perfectly fine spot for him. He just isn't. He just wasn't. It's hard. We're in a good spot right now as a fantasy owner because there's so many good receivers in the league that I can't argue guys that want to put the Jujus or the AJ Browns of the world or even guys like DK Metcalf's in your top. I mean, if you really love them, that's great. There's so many good receivers out there. So, Rob, what do you think about Juju?
Well, I also had Juju at 8. I agree, partially with what both of you guys have said. A guy that kind of, to me, is questionable to be top 10, but, we all, like Rick said, we all had him high a year ago before the disaster of last season happened in Pittsburgh. Thinking about wide receiver ones in the NFL, what kind of wide receiver one doesn't average 6 targets a game when they're healthy? I mean, that's what Juju was last year. He played 12 games. He had 70 targets. That's it. And so he only had 7 target or more targets in 5 of the games. Those games, 78 yards, 84 yards, 81 in a touch, 75 in a touch, 103 in a touch. So, I mean, he produced when he was throwing the football. But more than half the games last year, he wasn't throwing the football. With Ben back, even if Ben's not where he once was, he's going to get Juju the football. He's going to target him. And if he's got volume, he's going to put up points.
Yeah, that's where I would agree. And this is where it comes down for a lot of wide receivers. When we were talking about Cooper, like the only time Cooper hasn't been good is when he doesn't get volume. You know, the volume can shift from year to year. And looking at our list, it's pretty much, like who's your flavor, Chris got it's odd to me that basically a year ago Juju was Chris Godwin with the amount of targets and everything. And it's crazy that I don't have Godwin in there, but there's Juju, a younger guy that's been in that same spot, had that same success, and now we're considering him being a borderline top 10 pick. And it's just it's recency bias to me. And I the other thing I like, just Juju's personality. So I root for the kid for sure. Okay, so number 8, your number 8 was Juju, so I stole one from you. Did we talk about your number 8, or are we going to number 9?
No. We got to talk about number 8. We got to talk about your boy Allen Robinson, who is my number 8. I couldn't believe when I saw your list that I had him higher than you. When the guy's healthy, he's a beast. And he had Mitch Trubisky as his quarterback last year, and he still finished in the top 10 overall wide receivers in fantasy.
Number 8, baby.
Number 8, 153 targets. He caught 98 of those, and Mitch Trubisky is not an accurate passer. He caught a very good amount of those. 1,147 yards and 7 touchdowns. You're going to give him a functional quarterback. That dude could easily be wide receiver 1. I mean, like, if he gets a better quarterback, he's probably catching 120 to 130 of those passes. And the sky's the limit. I love Allen Robinson. The dude's only 26 years old. He'll be turning 27 during the season. He's still got plenty of years of value left. It's hard not to like him. When he's healthy, he gets 150 targets. All of his healthy seasons outside of his rookie year, 150 plus targets. And he catches a lot of those balls. So Allen Robinson is a surefire wide receiver 1 for me, and probably should have been higher. Now that I talk about him, I'm like, man, I feel bad about not having him above Chris Godwin.
I I fight with this because obviously I'm a Bears fan, but I was an Allen Robinson fan before he came to Chicago. One of the most, in the off season, one of the most exciting times I've ever had is when he posted an Instagram picture in a Cubs jersey before he signed with Chicago, and I was like, this dude's coming to Chicago, and I was excited.
Yeah, boy.
but you're right. The first year in Chicago, he was still getting his legs back under him, and finished off that season great. In the playoffs, monster game, and then that carried over with the worst quarterback in the NFL last year, like the worst throwing quarterback. Um, I mean, Mitch Trubisky was so inaccurate the other team couldn't even intercept the ball because they weren't in the vicinity of the ball either. So that's how bad a quarterback play was coming out of Chicago last year. Whether you like
Was he
Foles or
playing for
not,
TCU on Saturdays?
do what?
yeah,
Was he
yeah, he
playing
played for
for
TCU.
TCU on Saturdays?
He probably did. He probably masqueraded trying to improve a little bit, and it just didn't work. But whether you like Foles or not, he is a vast improvement over Mitch Trubisky circa 2019. Um, and we could even argue that he may be a vast improvement over Blake Bortles circa pre, you know, Bears career. And this is a guy that put up 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns with Blake Bortles. And he's still young, like you said. I think a lot of people forget that, how young he is, because he's been around for quite a while. And it's just, I mean, that offense improves. There's more touchdown upside. There's more accuracy from the quarterback, and the volume's still going to be there. Um, and I fought with it just because my bias, and I try and make sure I'm not being too biased. I thought I might have been the only one to have him in my top 10, so I feel a little bit better that Brad uh, came in here and set him before I did. But I have him at number 9, and you know, I don't see why it's so crazy. A lot of people say it's crazy, but this is a guy that finished last year with the worst quarterback as the wide receiver 8. And there ain't no reason why he can't do that with better quarterback play. So I don't know why it's crazy that he's in people's top 10. Um, Rob, you didn't, well, unless you changed your list, because I don't know, but you didn't have him originally in your first one. Did you have him in your top 10 as well?
No, I did not. Then
Terrible.
yeah, but as I'm looking at it and thinking about it and hearing you guys, like I'm thinking I'm low on him. Uh,
You are.
I think he's one of the best wide receiver talents in the league. He's just been stuck with bad quarterbacking a lot.
So bad.
But even with bad quarterbacking last year, right? Oh, Chicago's passing offense was terrible. He still had 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. So if he could do that with bad play, even if Nick Foles, who I don't think is that much better, to be honest,
He's average,
he
which
had a
is
great
better.
run in Philadelphia for the playoffs to win a Super Bowl. But I mean, as long as he sustains that production, I mean, he's borderline, I guess. And then, if Foles is marginally better, he's going to get better. I don't know. I think Bears fans would tend to agree that I don't know that Foles is an upgrade. I guess we'll have to see
He's
how it plays out. But
absolutely an upgrade passing the ball. I've watched every pass Mitch Trubisky's ever thrown, and Foles is an upgrade for sure. Not that he's great. I'm not saying he's great, but Trubisky is so bad.
Yeah, I mean Foles is average, but at least he'll make sure the ball stays in the stadium. I mean, like you don't know what Trubisky's going to do.
Like Rob, this will be your first season with us in the team chat, and you can ask Brad and the rest of the people on the Roto Heat team how many times I all caps messages in our team chat last year about Mitch Trubisky missing Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller on wide open touchdowns. And the other thing that I should note real quick before we get back to you on, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but this isn't like, the Bears offense was really bad, but it's not the same manner as like the Jaguars were in a lot of garbage time when he got that 1,414 touchdowns, because they were just a really bad team. The Bears were in every game, so it wasn't like they were just, chucking it up. Their defense kept them in the games. Their offense just, I about dropped the F bomb, sucked. Um, so it wasn't like he got all those yards and stuff in garbage time. They were competitive games. They just lost a lot of them. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think I pretty much covered it. I think I got to move him up, borderline top 10. I think he's a great talent, but you know, like I said, I mean, I was surprised just now looking at his numbers from last year with all the negative we hear about Trubisky, how well he actually produced statistically.
Yeah, that was 90% of Mitch Trubisky's passing output.
Well, good. Just let him key in on Allen Robinson then spike that fantasy value.
And the
So
Anthony
bad.
Miller fans died on the inside.
Dude, Anthony Miller he missed Anthony Miller on at least 7 touchdowns over the last 2 years, and it's disgusting because he gets so open. It's stupid. Um,
That's the problem. Too open, you can't deflect it in. It's like playing pinball with Trubisky. He's got to bounce it off 3, 4 guys to get it to the spot. It's
I
all
mean,
geometry.
now we're getting extreme. So that was Brad's number 8. Why don't you go to your number 9 there, Rob? Who you got there at number 9?
All right, I got DJ Moore, another young player I think who is very solid. Of course, that offense is going to be changing up some. Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is the definite upgrade from everybody they had last year because it wasn't pretty with Kyle Allen. It was early, and then it got ugly towards the end. Um, DJ Moore, good route runner, good in that short intermediate game where Teddy's going to thrive. Robbie Anderson's going to pull that coverage off the top. I think Curtis Samuel's going to kind of play the same style as DJ Moore with that. I think he can run better routes than people give him credit for. And I think you put one on the right, one on the left, and let Robbie Anderson pull the safeties away. And those guys play ball underneath all day long. And they're going to have a good season. But DJ Moore, clearly the top target on that team for me at the wide receiver position, if you're not counting CMC as a wide receiver. Although the Panthers apparently do with that contract. So
You get 100 receptions, you're a receiver. Brad, what are your thoughts there on DJ Moore?
Yeah, I like DJ Moore. I mean, he's another one of those a young guy with a lot of upside, very talented. The tough thing for me, anytime you get a new coach at the NFL level, that came from college, I tend to just kind of temper my expectations and wait and see how things slide out. If I have shares of the top players on those teams, I tend to hold them to see what happens. If I don't have them, I don't go trading for them. Like DJ Moore's a guy I have in a few leagues, and I'm not selling him. And if I don't own him, I'm not going to go buy him because I just want to see what happens. The nice thing with Matt Rule, though, is he likes to pass. I mean, if you look at his last few college seasons, his quarterbacks throw, over 400 attempts. So there's going to be plenty of action around. We know Teddy Bridgewater's accurate. We know he does a good job placing the ball. He's probably not, an amazing deep ball guy. He's going to do a lot of kind of short to intermediate type passes, but DJ Moore can run all the routes. He can do everything they need. So, between him and CMC, I mean, they can easily have a lion's share of those targets. So I can't knock it. I mean, he's not in my top 10, but he's probably in my top 15 to 20 range, I would guess. He's super talented young kid. He's probably 14, 15, I would guess. I don't have my rankings in front of me. So,
well, and besides Matt Rule,
Was,
like you mentioned, they also brought in Joe Brady, who just orchestrated that unbelievable LSU passing offense this fall.
yeah, Teddy Bridgewater is about to throw 60 touchdowns this year.
Hey,
well, I don't know about
all of the 5 yard, all of the 5 yard variety.
I'll say I don't know if he's going to do 60, but I could see him up around the 30 range.
Um, DJ Moore was one of the ones where I had a hard time not putting him even higher. The more I dug into last season and was reviewing players, the more and more I love this kid. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is like one of the perfect quarterbacks for him. And again, everybody knocks Teddy Bridgewater for the short passes last year, but take a look at uh, the average attempt yards per attempt for Drew Brees because they're some years have been lower than what Teddy Bridgewater's were last year. So that offense isn't a deep passing offense. They take their shots, but they are a dink and dunk offense, and that's just how that offense works. But you're also talking about a guy that came in and took over Drew Brees' offense. Like you're gonna, you're it's not designed for him, but he was capable of doing what that offense needed. Um, I think he's going to have more success. I think he's going to be able to throw it downfield more. He was very accurate on the downfield attempts that he did have. There just weren't a ton of them. So I think that DJ Moore, Brad mentioned, he can run every route. He can beat you deep. He can run precise routes, short and intermediate. I think his A dot was around 11 last year. Um, and that's a sweet spot where he could get 110 receptions and 8 touchdowns and really explode next year. So I'm not worried. They're going to pass the ball. I think they are going to try to get the ball into other people's hands to conserve um, CMC a little bit. I mean, they're going to still use the hell out of him, but maybe 320 touches rather than 400. Um, that's still 80 plays that get spread around, and that's Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. I also agree with what you said about Samuel. Samuel's A dot was in that 11 range previously in his career. Last year they used him deeper and it didn't work because their quarterbacks were terrible. But that whole offense I think improves. They have a better passing quarterback than they've had in a while because I think he's even a better passer than Cam Newton. Different styles, obviously, but I think there's a lot of touchdown upside in DJ Moore's future, and I love the kid, and it was hard for me not to put him higher. I have him at 10, so we're done talking about all my players, and yeah, that's where I am there. I think we only have one more player that we have not talked about, and that is Brad's number 9, hometown boy here.
A hometown boy that produced top 10 production with Jeff Driscoll and David Blaume. All right, come on. I mean, Kenny Galladay is easily got to be in the conversation for, top 10 to 15 when he's producing with nobody's throwing on the ball. I mean, he's consistently productive no matter who's passing him the ball. And we got to hope Stafford can stay healthy, but so far the last 2 years, that just hasn't been the case. I like him. He's still young enough. He's only 26, and he's very productive. He can make something out of nothing, and he's had to do that a lot in Detroit. So give me Kenny Galladay in the top 10, and I'm feeling good about it.
Rob?
And so is Michael Altman over in the Facebook group.
Michael.
I like Kenny Galladay too.
Go ahead.
What's that?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I like Kenny Galladay too, and another guy that could easily be in the top 10. I mean, there's only 10 spots in the top 10. Son of a gun. I probably got 17 guys who all at least could be in consideration for that. I mean, there's a lot, as Brad mentioned earlier, a lot of great wide receivers out there, a lot of guys to like a lot. Yeah, I think if I'm excited to see what Galladay does if Stafford stays in the full season this year. That pace he was on with Stafford was unbelievable, and he kept it up pretty well with those two, we'll call them no-name guys, Driscoll and Blau. But he still produced, but the pace he was on with Stafford was otherworldly. Probably he might have knocked out Godwin and Thomas for the top of the wide receiver charts if Stafford had stayed healthy.
Okay, so when I look at these lists that we've got, I had already mentioned garbage time one time earlier. And when you play for the Lions, you get a lot of garbage time. A lot of garbage time. If they ever had the lead and didn't have to throw 700 times a season, I like Kenny Galladay. I got to give our Detroit Lion fan here a little bit of shit, but it's also not false. They do trail a lot, uh, historically and recently. So there has been a lot of garbage time, especially with Blow and Driscoll. Um, they struggled to put up some points, and their defense struggled, and it wasn't a good combination. Obviously, Stafford being healthy is a huge benefit to any downfield threat, but um, I just didn't have him in my top 10. He's not far outside of my top 10. I have more shares. Like when I went through my teams, I had more shares than I thought I had. But this is another guy that we look back to that draft class. Um, and Kenny Galladay was another guy that you could get late second round, early third with Cooper Kupp, because there was a lot of people like who is it? Who's the value in this draft? Is it Cooper Kupp or is it Kenny Galladay? And I remember having some wars, and both of those guys there was passionate people on both sides of that argument, and they both turned out to be very good values for where you got them early. But what happens if the Lions do build a decent franchise and aren't trailing all the time? I don't know if he can maintain your top 10 list if that volume goes down because they're competitive.
Well,
Well, the good thing is we don't have to worry about that right now.
That true. We don't have to go there. They're bad forever,
yeah.
so we don't have to worry about that. So
My hope is the next coaching staff can turn this around because this one ain't doing it.
part of the reason why I asked that question was so Rob. I set Rob up perfect. I put it on a tee, and I was hoping he'd take it. So yeah, we don't have to go down that way because that's not happening. So we'll never see the other side of that.
Detroit would probably riot if they had a winning franchise. I mean, this such passionate football fans to just get crapped on every year. It's
All right.
terrible.
Okay, so we've talked about our top 10. I do have a question that I wanna see if is there one guy on your list where if that team would happen to land one of these big wide receivers in this draft class, you would be a little bit concerned that they could drop out of your top 10?
Oh,
No, I don't think so on mine. If anything, I think it's some of the guys who are sitting just outside my top 10 that are on some of those teams where they could bump up if they get one of those guys like Keenan Allen. Just feel a little more confident maybe than Tyrod's 3,000 passing yards a season. If he had a rookie who maybe had the ability to throw for some more. But yeah, I don't really see it knocking down anybody because I think for the most part, all these guys have pretty established starters in tow.
if I had to pick one on my list, it's probably Devontae Adams at 10 because I expect them to be one of the only. When I'm looking at my list of top 10, most of these teams have established multiple receivers that they're probably not going to take another guy high. Where Green Bay, I expect them to take a wide receiver in probably day 2 would be my guess, maybe even day 1, depending on how it shakes out. And if they get a guy like a Rieger or any of those guys that you've been hearing mocked to them, I still expect Adams probably around 10. But if I had to pick one, he'd be the one that I could see going at falling down to like 13 or 14, and being right outside wide receiver 1.
Did I misunderstand the question? Did you ask about quarterbacks, or was I just crazy?
Oh, I thought
Or
you
did
said.
you just say
I thought you said
anyone?
if they drafted wide receiver. I'm sorry.
No, I was no. I was saying, are any of these wide receivers, and maybe not drop out of the top 10 per se, but that you would knock down a couple spots if their team landed one of the big wide receivers.
Oh,
Adams would be my pick too if they got a bigger receiver that was a red zone threat. Not Jalen Rager though. I think Rager actually helps them because they're different. But if it was like a T. Higgins that could catch 8 touchdowns, then that might pull some touchdowns away from Adams. that would concern me more. But I do think on my list, Green Bay is really the only one that I could see taking a wide receiver high enough um, to really, be a threat in any way, shape, or form. Um, so it's not about Adams. It's just Green Bay needs another receiver, and I don't really think any of the other teams of my guys do. So, Rob, now that you know what we're talking about, do you want to change your response at all?
Yeah, I guess I do. I'm sorry. I swore I heard quarterback, and so I just thought I'd talk quarterbacks first. Uh, no, I agree that Adams, if there's another big athletic wide receiver, that it could knock him down a little bit. Um, the only other guy I think would be hindered by a receiver being drafted, and I no longer think they're in the market, is Arizona and D Hop. Just because there's already so many mouths to feed. If they did go back to that well again, like a lot of the early offseason talk was that they were going to, that's just at some point, more is less, and they might be starting to get to that point if they were to draft somebody. I don't think they will any longer, but that would be the other one for me.
I would have said him also if they didn't already have 84 wide receivers on their team because they have a lot of them. So I don't think they could definitely use offensive line, defense. They could spend their capital there instead, and it'd be a better choice. But who knows? We always get surprised by somebody. Um, so I had a question. CXK, our top fan over on YouTube, he is our number one. He shows up to everything. We appreciate you being around. He says, if you have some time, could you answer this? I have the 101 free agent pick. I have to choose between Keenan Allen, Robert Woods, uh, or Allen Robinson, and I don't know. CXK, do you know that Brandon Cooks was traded because he put in parentheses, I also have Brandon Cooks. Um, he may fail his physical and be back with them. Who knows? Because people are having problems with their physicals right now. But uh, A Rob's my highest rank, so that's who I would go with personally. You had Keenan Allen higher though, didn't you, Brad?
Keenan Allen is higher ranked, but I would still take Allen Robinson.
Is that because of age or?
Yeah, probably age, and just because I'm confident that no matter what happens, Allen Robinson's going to produce wide receiver one. Like I said, I have concerns about the Chargers offense as a whole, and that could make Keenan Allen slide a little bit. So A-Rob I feel is more insulated.
Rob.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I go A Rob over Keenan just because of the questions there. I like I was saying when I thought we were talking about rookie quarterback landing spots. I don't know that Tyrod throwing for 3,000 yards a season is a benefit for Keenan Allen. I'm not saying Tyrod's a bad quarterback. He's serviceable. He's a good NFL quarterback, but I have a little bit of worry there about the fantasy production. And Robert Woods, it kind of like how you were talking Cooper Kupp during the top 10, getting a little bit of a boost. I mean, he is a target guy. He gets a lot. He's been very productive, but he's not on the level of either of these other two, just as far as talent and skill. He's a volume type guy, in my opinion. He's very, very good, but Robinson and Allen are the better wide receivers.
Yeah, I think we could. I think we all. It seems like we all agree that really Keenan Allen and Allen Robinson, they're talent wise, they're probably in the range from 8 to 10 talent wise. It's just what kind of QB play are they going to get, and we know that Allen Robinson can put up numbers even with bad quarterback play. Not that Keenan Allen can't, because we already talked. Philip Rivers was probably, out of the guys that started all year, was probably, at least, worst 3 to 4 quarterbacks in the league last year. And he still put up numbers. So it's not that he's not insulated, but we haven't really seen him with anybody but Philip Rivers. And that's my difference there. I've always loved Keenan Allen. I do agree with what Rob said earlier. Keenan Allen is year to year greatly undervalued. Um, and if we were, you know, talking a year ago, I probably would have had it the opposite. But I think Allen Robinson, age, um, and just knowing where they're at and that offense is going to continue to run through him, um, would be my pick there. He said, I forgot Cooks got moved. That's right. Thanks, guys. No, thank you. You put in a lot of time to support us. We appreciate it. And we're always here to answer your questions if you got them.
Well, and I'd even add, with Cooks, I don't know how he feels, how you guys feel about Brandon Cooks. If you got the ability to go get free agents and, want to maybe open up a spot, I'd almost like Robert Woods more than Cooks if he makes it back around to you. So, if you use that one and got Allen Robinson, and then you have a chance at Woods and trading Woods out for Cooks at this point, I'd be okay with that and kind of picking up two of those three guys.
Yeah, I mean, Cooks has a nice ceiling, but Woods is another guy that gets undervalued every year. I mean, the dude's just super consistent. So I like Woods' consistency over Cooks' big playability, plus the fact that Cooks gets hurt just way too much.
Yeah, that's I do like the ceiling there, and depending on how I don't know how many like keepers you had. I don't know what the rest of your wide receiver core looks like, but it might be an upside pick if you are looking for depth. So that would be, that would depend on the rest of the roster for me, which one I would rather have. Both of them could be nothing 2 years from now. So um, I think it's, do you need upside or do you need consistent wide receiver play? Um, and then you pick which one. But one more concussion, and that could be it for Brandon Cooks, and that's the scary part. Um, where did it go? Somebody said. I don't even. I wish I knew. It just doesn't show me who it is on Facebook. Uh,
The Keenan Allen comment was Paul.
oh, ignore.
I mean, he was
No, I'm
just agreeing.
kidding.
You
I'm
know, he's kind
kidding.
of agreeing with us. So I didn't say any of that because it's not a question. He's just agreeing with us. Um, I did like Kevin Kloss's comment. No, Tyrod is indeed bad. So obviously the community doesn't necessarily agree with Ty more than hot garbage.
I think that whole Buffalo offense was bad under Rex Ryan. So um, I do think that he gets. I think he's better than he gets credit for. I'm not saying that he's good. But I think he's better than he gets credit for, and especially if that offense changes to more of a, a Baltimore style, uh, where they utilize the quarterback running more. He's capable of doing that type of stuff. He's not the best passer. I'm not saying that. But in Buffalo, he never really had a chance. That offense was putrid during those years with no weapons. At least Watkins was hurt. They didn't utilize Robert Woods. And then it was Marquise Goodwin. So what are you going to do? I agree.
We
He
did have
throws a
one
good
question
deep ball.
earlier. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just
We
going to
did have one
say,
question earlier on Facebook. That was, I think, a little bit about Kenny Galladay from Michael Altman. Any worry about the Lions drafting Tua? I don't personally. I think that's just the quarterback in waiting behind Stafford and would be another, guy who's going to get your best receiver the football from that standpoint. I also don't know if they're going to do it, though, with that 3 pick. I think they have some other needs defensively. So
Some other needs. That's a funny joke.
they need to
yeah,
draft a new city and move
they've
the
got
team
19 other positions.
to draft a new owner, new GM, new coach, new fan
I'd be
base.
I'd be sweet with them moving the team because then I could just change my allegiance and become a Colts fan. At least they've got something to watch.
That's disgusting.
Jim Irsay, you mean?
Chicago, bruh.
If I change my league to another NFC North team, I've hated them for so long. It just doesn't make any sense. No, I don't see them taking Tua anyway. I mean, they have so many holes. Why would you get a backup quarterback when your coaching staff's going to get fired at the end of the year if you don't get to the playoffs? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So I don't see them going after Tua because they still think Stafford, should be good for another few years. So, and he's only in his early 30s. So as long as he can bounce back and his back doesn't break on him, he should be fine.
I mean, I wouldn't be any more
Uh-huh.
worried about Tua than I would be. I mean, the only reason to worry about Tua is injury, and you're already worried about injury at the quarterback position with Galladay. So, I mean, it's true, right? You just said it. Is his back?
Galladay's not the quarterback though.
We're talking about Galladay's quarterback.
Oh, well, it sounded like you said Galladay was the quarterback, and I was
I'm
just
saying
chuckling
that
at you.
you just got done talking about Stafford and his back. The only reason why you would be worried about Tua being Galladay's quarterback is if you're worried about Tua not playing, because Tua's a good quarterback, and you're already worried about that. So that's what I was saying, is that's the only reason why to be worried, but you're already worried about it anyway. So just get your blow and
get your blow.
I didn't mean cocaine. I meant your David Blow. Okay,
wow.
So
you mean Chase Daniel, because Chase Daniel's the backup.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Wah, wah, wah.
Kyle Bannon, but going back to the, I don't know this off the top of my head, but it sounds correct. That Tyrod actually led the league in accuracy one of those years in Buffalo. But they didn't throw a lot because they were a defense team that ran the ball a lot.
Yeah.
But, and then Kyle Bannon said that he unsubscribed because I talk shit about his Colts. Sorry. Somebody said, would you trade any person in your top 10 for rookie pick 101, PPR 1QB?
Yeah. Michael Altman over on Facebook.
I will tell you that I would have a hard time taking the 101 straight up for any of my guys that I have in my top 10.
Yeah, I probably would. Even Devontae Adams, who I seem to hate for some reason, who is my number 10 receiver, I still wouldn't trade the 101 for.
You wouldn't trade the...
Yeah, I think it'd be...
I
wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't trade him for the 101.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. I thought you said it backwards.
Oh, yeah, I might have, but no. It's I would need more for any of these guys.
I would trade the 101 for people on Brad's list. Or I would trade Brad's list for 101.
I see Paul traded the 1-1 for Sutton.
That's the one. I would do that.
No.
I'll take Jonathan Taylor for Sutton.
Can't do it, bro. Sutton will still be playing when Jonathan Taylor's retired, so.
Well, that's fine. I'm worried about winning ships now.
If I was going to do it for anybody on my list, it would probably just because of the, Brady and two really good wide receivers there. And I like Godwin better. I think of those two, that's the one I'd rather have. So if I was going to do that, it would maybe be for Evans. But other than that, I mean, for the most part, these guys are all young and productive. It's not like, they're all going to produce for a good long while. Unless I had a really, really, really solid stable of wide receivers and nothing at running back, I don't think I'd be doing it.
That's where, and that can happen. Like, I literally just started a 3-team dispersal draft tonight, and I ended up with Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson, and there was another one of the OBJ in a 3-team in a 16-team league. I ended up with all three of those guys. So, in that situation, I even got Joe Mixon too I don't know how I got all those players in a dispersal, but in that situation, I might be willing to do that if I need that running back because I have three of my top 10 guys, my top 10 guys, not necessarily consensus top 10 guys, but in that situation, I may be willing to do it. Um, and then OBJ would probably be the first one out of those three that I'd be willing to do that. Um, but yeah,
You can just keep going, Rick. You don't have to read that comment from Facebook.
yeah, I can tell who it is, and it means nothing. Um,
Oh, jeez. You got any other questions from YouTube?
you wouldn't tell him to quit talking for me last night. He just kept rambling about nonsense, and I was like, "What is this dude talking about?" Skip, skip track, skip track. I'm just kidding, Paul. You've done a really great job on the live streams, and we give each other shit. But yeah, I do want to say that publicly, because people hear me give you shit all the time, but they don't understand that's just what we do. I'm not breaking rule number one because we know that's what we get with each other, and we actually agreed on something yesterday, and my mind about exploded. He did say it was a sackle.
Yeah.
That was great. But
True story.
um, there are no more questions over on YouTube. We are 2 hours in.
Mm.
So
No big deal.
no big deal because that's normal. Um,
Pretty usual.
Again, I want to let everybody know we are hard at work right now. The whole team, we have rankings coming out this week. Just waiting. Go tag Taylor Cornell and tell him to get his rankings done. Um, and we have
He gets
we have
He's too busy working on his podcast.
we have one QB rookie, super flex rookie. We got Devi Superflex. We got IDP rookie, and we've got redraft and NFL power rankings all coming out this week. We're hard at work. We want to bring you guys more and more stuff. So keep an eye out for that on rotoheat.com. Um, Round 3 of the rookie mock draft will be dropping this week. I got to start putting all that together. And Kyle Bannon resubscribed to us. So the Colts shit talk did not drive him away. But Kyle, you have to understand, your Colts, 2006, kept my Bears from a Super Bowl. I hate you forever, and I'm only 3 hours away from Indianapolis if you got words. Rob, Brad.
This is how we get people to join up with us. We will fight you.
Hey, don't unsubscribe, man. That's not cool. That's not cool. No, we appreciate everybody that tunes in. We appreciate everybody in the group. We went over 1,400 members, and it's still moving up daily. And we are getting really close to that 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So please don't unsubscribe.
Please send your friends to subscribe.
Yeah, make fake accounts and subscribe. Get your mom, tell your mom to play in your fantasy league and get her to subscribe. And if you think that we give shitty advice, tell your whole league about it, and then don't do what we say. Get them in there. Get them in there.
That should be the new slogan for RotoHeat. RotoHeat.com. Your mom loves fantasy football.
Your mom loves my fantasy footballs.
Oh boy.
Fun. All right. Any last words? Oh, check out Sully's 2 Cents. Check out the Dino Source podcast. Taylor's got it up on everywhere you can listen to podcasts, or you can check it out on Roto Heat. Click the podcast tab, and you can click all the follow buttons depending on where you want to listen to that. And then keep an eye out. We will, if we're going to go live more this week, we will drop it on YouTube ahead of time so you can get the reminder on that. If we don't have the time, we will be back next Tuesday for the Heat Seekers live stream, and Brad will be back Monday for the IDP Heat Seekers live stream. Again, we appreciate everybody that tunes in, gives us time. Last words, fellas. You take us out.
I got it. We're 2 hours in, and it's getting crazy.
That'll be
don't forget to go over to Twitter. Follow all the different folks on Twitter. Roto Heat Fantasy is the main one.
Yes. Yes. I wanted to say this and I forgot, so I'm glad you brought it up. If you go to Twitter, you hit that @ sign and you type in Roto Heat, all the guys are going to come up except for one. And it sucks for him because he could have just made his name Roto Heat Taylor and he'd pop up in that list, but he didn't. So everybody else @ Roto Heat and then follow all the guys because we're all there. So make that real easy for you.
Yeah, buddy.
And Roto Heat Soli's really trying to get to the 1,000 follower mark on Twitter. So help out Roto Heat Soli. You can help out everybody, but he's pumping that right now. So we want to give him a shout out. And he puts in a lot of work.
He does, and he wants some friends. So be his friend.